once again a great privilege to have Rav Zev Leff come and speak to us. Rav Leff is always so amenable and available to give us of his time. There isn't much of it to be had. He's always busy with his myriad of things that he does for Klal Yisrael, as being a Rav and a Rosh Yeshiva and a Rosh Kollel, and a lecturer and an author. And yet he still makes time for us, and we're very appreciative of that. And without further ado, we'd like to present Rav Leff, who inspires us before all of our Moadim times of the Jewish calendar to give us meaning. Without further ado, Rav Leff.
Says that the purpose of a tainus is that when sorrows, yisurim, calamities, tragedies occur, whether they be calamities and tragedies in the present or tragedies and calamities that occurred in the past and that have not yet been corrected, like the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. There's a mitzvah to cry out, to blow trumpets. And the Rambam says that this is a function of tshuva. When a person cries out and realizes that tragedies and calamities don't just happen by coincidence, but they are the result of an imperfect world. And that imperfection means that there's something missing, that we've sinned. The word chet, sin, means chesaron, something's missing. And surely if it's more than just missing, but there's something negative. So because of those imperfections, the world is imperfect. And we have calamities and tragedies and suffering. When a person realizes that, he'll repent and he'll correct those chesronos, those things that are missing and those things that are negative. And then, hopefully, the tragedy and calamity will go away. And therefore, the motif of every fast day is tshuva. We say slichos, prayers of forgiveness, vidui, confession, tshuva. That's the motif of what a fast day is all about, except for one, Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, there are no slichos, there are no prayers of forgiveness, there's no vidui, there is no confession, there's kinos, there's lamentations, there's mourning. But if the whole motif of a fast day is supposed to lead you to tshuva, where's the tshuva of Tisha B'Av? Second question. Regular mourning period works something like this. Rahman al-Islam, somebody dies. The day of death and burial is the most intense mourning. And then it dissipates. After that, you sit Shiva, you have 7 days of mourning that go a little bit down. The first 3 days are for intense crying. After that, you're supposed to stop crying intensely. After the 7 days, which have very strict laws, you don't leave the house, and you don't wash, and you don't anoint yourself, and no marital relations, and you don't wear shoes, and you don't sit on a chair. And then, after the Shiva's over, goes a little bit more down, dissipates a little bit more, to the 30-day period, the continuation till the end of 30 days. Again, there are certain laws of mourning, much less intense than the laws of Shiva. And then for a regular relative, that's the end of the mourning. For a parent, you continue on till the end of the 12 months as honor for a parent. If we think about it, the rabbis wanted to institute a yearly mourning period for the temple, for the Beis HaMikdash. So they should have done the following. We should start on Tisha B'Av as if it's the day of death. This is the day of destruction, corresponds to the day of death, and it says that on Tisha B'Av a person is supposed to feel that the dead body, somebody just died, he's supposed to feel that. As if there's a dead relative lying before him. And then the rabbi should have made 7 days of mourning after Tisha B'Av, like the Shiva. The person died, now you mourn for 7 days. And then to have another period after that that corresponds to the 30 days. And after that, the mourning would be over on a yearly basis. Instead, the rabbis did it inverted. We start with a period of Shivasar, the Tammuz, the 3 weeks, which corresponds to many of the laws of the 30 days. And then we build up Rosh Chodesh Av, the mourning becomes more intense. And then Erev Tisha B'Av even more intense, and on Tisha B'Av it becomes the most intense, and then it's over. This year especially. Next day, no more mourning. Not only that, but the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av, Shabbos Nachamu, there are Sfarim that say that it's considered like a Yom Tov, Simcha. Very hard to understand why the order is inverted. Why not mourn for the Beis HaMikdash the way the regular mourning occurs? So let's start with the second question first, and eventually we'll get back to the first question and explain what exactly Tisha B'Av is all about. Let's first discuss why the regular mourning period is as it is. It says in the Gemara, Gzeira shehameis mishtakach min halei b'achar yud beis chodesh. There's a special decree from heaven that someone who died is forgotten from the heart after 12 months. Now that does not mean that somebody's mourning for a parent, Rahman al-Islam. They mourn for 12 months, and they wake up after the 12 months the next morning, and they can't forget to remember who's they're mourning for. They're forgotten. That's absurd. Never happens like that. A person doesn't forget who he's mourning for. What it means, I think, is the emphasis is on min halev. When somebody dies, a person is hit like a ton of bricks emotionally. And the Torah wanted, and the rabbis wanted, that he should be able to go back to normal life. But you can't go back all of a sudden. It's impossible. For various reasons. Now we'll just say because it's impossible emotionally. It's such grief, such emotions, that you can't just go business as regular. So it's like a deep sea diver. A deep sea diver can't come up very quickly. He has to come up slowly, otherwise he gets the bends. Same thing. You can't emerge from this deep emotional shock all at once. It needs to dissipate slowly. So therefore the Torah and the rabbis instituted this period of mourning where you're able to ventilate your feelings of grief, your emotion. 7 days you stay in the house and people come and comfort you. And little by little you ventilate these feelings, these tremendous emotions of mourning. Then 30 days you're ready to get a little bit more settled and acclimated to the new situation. You can go out of the house, but there's still certain laws of mourning that help you to ventilate these emotions. And finally, at the end of 12 months, the mace is nishtakach min halei. The mourning leaves the realm of the heart totally, and now is under the control of the intellect. It's no longer an uncontrollable emotional feeling, but it's more something that a person can feel emotionally, but be in control of intellectually. That's the purpose. Purpose is to slowly get you back to business as regular and to relegate these strong emotions from the realm of total emotion where you're not in control to emotions that are under the control of your intellect. That is impossible by the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. No one, at least in my estimation, maybe you're on a higher level than me and you can imagine differently, but I can't. No one can come on Tisha B'Av and feel like they've just been emotionally crushed. The Beis HaMikdash is gone. It's been gone for 2,000 years. And I'll tell you a secret, I never knew what it was. I wasn't around when it was here. So I don't know what I'm missing. It's like somebody coming to you and telling you, you know, I've discovered that today, 500 years ago, your great-great-great-great-grandmother died. You're not going to emotionally become distraught. Oh, my great-great-grandmother, and she died today. You never saw her. You never met her. She's been dead for 500 years. Okay, it's an interesting tidbit of knowledge. But you're not going to become emotionally distraught over it. How in the world can a person become emotionally distraught over the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? Let me tell you what it's like. The Rambam says that Ein bein Olam Hazeh Mosa Mashiach and the Shib Malchus Bavad. What Shmuel says in the Gemara, the Rambam passes like that the major difference between this world and the world of Mashiach is only that we won't be subjugated to the nations of the world. But otherwise, Olam Kimin Hagol Noek. It's a regular, natural world. The sun's not going to rise in the west and set in the east. It's going to be a natural world, not supernatural. So, that's the Rambam. Yet that same Rambam in another place describes what it's going to be like in the time of Mashiach. And it goes something like this. People will not die until they're hundreds of years old. There'll be no sickness. There'll be no wars, no competition. All of the luxuries of life will be available like the dust of the earth. That doesn't sound to me like a natural world. That sounds pretty supernatural. So how could the same Rambam say that in the time of Mashiach, the world will be a natural world, at the same time say that this is what the world's going to be like? The answer, I think, is very simple. It'll be a mush. Imagine an institution that caters to crippled people. An institution for the crippled, and they have a policy that no one is allowed to enter that institution unless they're crippled. So the cleaning company, the cooks in the kitchen, the nurses, the doctors, everybody is either crippled or they're in a wheelchair and appear to be crippled. No one can walk in that institution. If you come to visit, you have to get into a wheelchair. That way everybody feels comfortable. Everybody's the same. A child was born to parents with a genetic disease that crippled them, and the child was born crippled. And he was born in this institution. And his entire life he grew up in this institution. He never saw anyone not wheeling around in a wheelchair. And one day, after his 18th birthday, he wheels out of the institution and comes face to face with somebody walking on both legs. What's he going to think? This is a miracle. This guy's a freak. People don't walk on two legs. People wheel around in chairs. This is supernatural. What's the truth? That's a natural world. Except you got so used to a handicapped, unnatural world, subnatural world, that you think that's what the natural world is. The Rambam says that when Mashiach comes, it's not going to be a supernatural world. It's going to be the natural world, but not the world that we know. Because the world we know is not the natural world. The world that was supposed to be before the sin of Adam and Chava, and all the other sins of all the generations that compounded it, is supposed to be that people would live hundreds of years. No sickness, no competition, no jealousy, no wars. That's the natural world. Except we have become so used to an unnatural, subnatural, handicapped world that we think this is nature. But it's not, it's subnature. So we think that nature is supernatural, but it's not true. That's the natural world. So we become used to a world without a Beis HaMikdash. Seems pretty nice. You're sitting here in the Beis Medrash learning Torah. Right? Not too far away, there's pizza shops, shawarma shops. Right? What could be better? I mean, This is, black kosher. What's missing? And you have a kosel over here, people daven by the kosel. So what exactly is the problem? What exactly is missing? And it's hard for anybody to really put their finger on it because they never experienced what was, that they could feel what is now different. This is the world we were born into. For 2,000 years, this is the world people were born into. No one can tell me that you can come on Tisha B'Av and feel emotionally like a ton of bricks just fell on you because the Beis HaMikdash has been destroyed. Therefore, you have to do the opposite. You have to build up intellectually to be able to feel some emotion. So you start the morning period with Shivasa B'Tammuz, and you start to feel uncomfortable. You can't listen to music, you can't dance, you can't get married. Something's wrong. You can't say Shechiyanu. Everything's not right. You get intellectually used to the idea that something's wrong. And then you build up. The 9-day start. You can't bathe. You can't wear freshly washed clothing. You really feel uncomfortable. And now you begin to feel, something not right. Something's wrong. And then comes Erev Tish, and finally, after building up, maybe Tisha B'Av, you can feel something emotional. So a regular morning starts with emotion, and then the rabbis want you to dissipate it and take control. And Tisha B'Av is just the opposite. It starts with intellect and builds up towards emotion. That's one reason that the order of mourning, when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, is the inverted order of a regular mourning period. Second idea. That which HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, threw us into Golus for 2,000 years, is not because he doesn't like us, because he hates us, because he's disgusted with us. Just the opposite. Torah tells us clearly. God tells us why he did this. Told us before he did it, why he's going to do it if it's necessary. The Afghan Zos Biosam Be'eretz Oiveihem Lo Ma'ashtim V'lo Ga'altim L'chalosam L'hofen Brisi Itam. Even when they are in the land of their enemies, I'm going to throw them into exile and I'm going to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. It's not because I'm disgusted with them. It's not because I abominate them. It's not because I want to abrogate my covenant with them. Just the opposite. I'm their God. I didn't do it out of revenge to hurt them. I did it because I love them. What does that mean? That doesn't sound like great love. Throw us into Golus, destroy the Beis HaMikdash. But the Ribono Shel Olam knew that people have free choice. He gave us free choice. And he wants us to have free choice. And sometimes we can make very bad choices. And as other nations have, they can choose to go on a suicide path. Self-destruction. And they keep on that path until that's it, it's over. They've self-destroyed, suicide, spiritual, national suicide, and then they disappear into the history books. It happened to Babylon and Persia and Rome and Greece, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. There was a fall. They reached the pinnacle, and then because they became totally corrupt, little by little, they committed spiritual suicide, and they ceased to exist. There's no more Roman Empire. It's all in the history books. It's all in the ruins of Rome for tourists. That's it. The Jewish people could have done the same thing. We were on that path twice. Once when the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, second time when the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. But God loves us, and he has a covenant with us, and he won't permit us to commit spiritual suicide. And therefore, when things get really bad, he won't force us to do what's right either, because he wants to give us free choice. So he waits until there is no other option, and at that point, he does what's necessary in order to preserve us as a people, and if that means destroying the Beis HaMikdash and throwing us into Golus, which I'll briefly explain how that works, then that's what's necessary. Let me give you an example that works very well with men. I've yet to have success getting this marshal over to women. You understand why I'm saying? I made up the marshal, so don't start thinking of other options. There are no other options because I made up the marshal, and I can make it up any way I want. So accept the fact that these are the conditions. You have a 5-year-old super brat. The kid is incorrigible, can't discipline him, and he's also super strong. And his greatest joy in life is running into the highway and playing chicken with trucks. Standing in front of them, making faces, and then jumping out of the way just at the last minute. This is his dream of fun. He doesn't like computer games. He likes to play chicken with trucks in the highway. And his mother has tried everything, knowing that someday he's not going to get out of the way in time, and she's not going to have a little boy anymore. And the boy doesn't understand this, because he watches television. And on television, people get hit by trucks, and the next week they're back on the show. So he thinks, it's not so terrible. So he loves to go in the highway, and his mother has tried everything. She tried modern methods of education. She sat down and said, what do we feel about getting hit by trucks? Or how do we feel about, running in the highway? And that didn't help, surprisingly. And then she became a little bit more conservative, and she started yelling at the kid. Don't run in the highway. You're going to get hit by a truck. That didn't help. And then she became even more old-fashioned, and she actually punched the kid when he ran into the highway, hoping that he'll remember he got hit. And maybe he'll stop running into the highway. The kid just laughed it off. And nothing helps. The kid is incorrigible. One day, the mother's walking with this little brat on the side of the highway, and a 16-wheel semi-trailer is speeding down the highway at 90 miles an hour. And the kid sees the truck, and the mother feels the kid pulling away from her. And she knows there is no way that if the child runs into the street in front of this truck, the truck's not going to be able to stop, he's not going to be able to get out, and that's the end of her child. Finished. If the child runs into the street, he's gone. There's no other option. He's going to be hit by the truck, and that's it. The mother starts yelling at the kid. Doesn't help. She starts punching him. It doesn't help. And he's super strong. She can't hold on to him. He's pulling away. The mother has an iron pole in her other hand. She has one other option, and that's it. Take that iron pole and break the kid's legs. He won't run in the street. And she'll save his life. If you were that mother, would you break your child's legs? If you loved him, yeah. If you really couldn't care about it and you wanted to get rid of this kid, you would tell him, Tacula, why don't you go run for the truck? But if you really loved the child and you didn't want him to get hit by the truck, then you break his legs. If there was no other option. That's what God did. I can't get this marshal over to women. They constantly say, well, there's another option. You can do something else, whatever it is. A woman just can't imagine breaking her child's legs out of love. But a father can imagine. But that's the truth. The Ribono Shel Olam yelled at us, hit us, tried everything, sent us prophets, calamities, tragedies, and nothing helped. And we continued on that self-destructive path. And he knew that if he continues letting us on this path, that's the end of us. And he won't let that happen. So out of tremendous love, instead of destroying us or letting us destroy ourselves, he destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, threw us into Golus, and that began a period of rehabilitation. Now it's possible to stop the suicide path and turn it around. It'll take a long time. For 2,000 years already. But it's helped. How so? How by? Because Klal Yisrael had the Beis HaMikdash, And they think that everything's fine. We're real pals with God because we have a Beis HaMikdash. We go to visit him all the time. But God left the Beis HaMikdash long before. But externally it looked like everything's fine. So when everything on the outside looks fine, there's something that's called pain. People think that pain is a negative thing. I am not a masochist. But pain is a very positive thing. Because if you couldn't experience pain, you wouldn't know that something's wrong. Pain is a warning that tells you that something's wrong. Go to the doctor and find out what's wrong. Because if you wouldn't have any pain, imagine a person wouldn't have any sense of pain. Puts his hand on a gas burner. He won't take the hand away until he smells his flesh burning. And then it's going to be too late because it's not going to be able to heal. But if you put it down, you get pain, you right away pull your hand out. So you got to burn. But it's never that bad because you know something's wrong. You have pain, you go to the doctor, you find out you have a chance of being cured. Yisurim, suffering, is the external expression that there's something wrong spiritually. Go find out what's wrong. Start thinking. Seek advice. Do something. So the Rabbanu Shalom, the Gemara says, took out his anger on sticks and stones. Doesn't mean that God had to get his anger out. It means that he either could have destroyed us or he could have done something that would shock us so much that we would now be able to be rehabilitated. In addition, we lived in Eretz Israel and we wanted to live like Goyim. We weren't happy to live like Jews. So God said, you know what? You want to live like Goyim? Why don't you get a close look at all of them? So I'll send you on a world tour over 2,000 years. You get to see all of them. You want to be like the Babylonians? Take a look at them. You want to be like the Persians? You want to be like the Spaniards? The Germans? Take your pick. Which nation exactly do you want to be like? And after going around the world for 2,000 years and getting a close look, hopefully some Jews fail the test and they assimilate. And some Jews are shocked into realizing maybe this isn't what we want. So a combination of both things is because God loves us. He won't let us commit spiritual suicide like he's let other nations. Rav Zev Leff said that when he was a youngster, maybe 5 or 6 years old, he was pretty wild. And one day he was wild in the house, and he caused a plate that his mother had as an heirloom to be broken. And she had these plates on a shelf or whatever, and one of them fell off because he was jumping around the house too much. And his mother got very angry at him, and she maybe yelled at him, maybe even touched him, and he felt terrible. He said he even felt more terrible though, because a little while after that, one of the roosters that they raised got loose in the house and caused another one of those plates to fall and break. And the mother didn't yell at the rooster. She didn't hit the rooster. She just shooed it outside. He said, you know what? It's better to be a rooster than a kid. Roosters get shooed out of the house and kids get yelled at and hit. Right? I'd rather be a rooster. He said he felt like that all day until supper time came. Supper time, he was sitting at the table with his parents, and the rooster either was outside or on the table. So he said, you know what? Now I realize better to be a kid. My mother cared enough about me to yell at me, to hit me, because she wants me to be a mensch. She wants me to grow up and be somebody productive. But the rooster's never going to be a mensch. It's going to be a rooster. At best, it will taste the same way whether you hit it, yell at it or not. The same rooster on the plate eventually. So there's nothing to invest in disciplining the rooster. But the Rabbanu Shalom feels that there's hope for me, that my mother feels there's hope for me, so she's willing to discipline me. And you realize then, it's good to be a child, not a rooster. That's why the month where the terrible tragedies of Klal Yisrael occurred is called the month of Av, because it teaches us that we have a Father, that He cares. Because if He didn't care, He just would have let us sink into oblivion like the other nations of the world. But He cares about us, and He loves us. And that's what it says in the end of Eicha. Ki im ma'os me'astanu. If you're really disgusted with us, Kotzafto aleinu ad ma'od, you got too angry with us. Why did it take 2,000 years? You just destroyed us and finished. Why'd you bother with us for the last 2,000 years? Must be that you're not bent on destroying us or hurting us or being disgusted with us, but this is a process of rehabilitation. This is a process of coming back. It takes a while, a long while, but there's hope. So that is what Tisha B'Av is all about. It is a symbol that the Rebbeinu Shalom cares enough about us to do something drastic, to break our legs, when the other alternative is total destruction. But even I admit that the first line of defense is not to break the kid's legs. Like the first time the kid runs into the street, you don't call him home and break his legs. He'll never run the street again. First you reason with him, then you yell at him, then you hit him. And after all of that doesn't work, then you break his legs. It's a last resort. So too the Rebbeinu Shalom did the same thing with us. And first, when we were on that suicide path, he let Goyim come and surround Yerushalayim, Asara B'Teves, and we should have gotten the message. Something's wrong. We better wake up. We better do tshuva. We didn't get the message. And then, a few months later, the second Beis HaMikdash, they broke through the walls on Shavuos B'Tammuz. Hopefully, that's a little bit more. God started yelling at us. Now He's already hitting us. We should have gotten the message. Had we gotten the message, never would have progressed to the next stage. We'd have done tshuva, and that would have corrected everything. We didn't get the message. Then came the month of Av. The Goyim started to occupy the Beis HaMikdash and revel inside. And then, if we would have gotten the message then and done tshuva, we wouldn't have had to come to the next stage. Until finally, there was no other choice but to break our legs and destroy the Beis HaMikdash. And every year, we don't commemorate this by having a mourning period, but we relive it. Every generation that the Beis HaMikdash was not built, every year the Beis HaMikdash isn't built. It's like it's being destroyed again. And we go through the same process. And we start with Asara B'Teves, and if we would have done tshuva, we never would have come to Shavuos B'Tammuz. And if we then have to have Shavuos B'Tammuz, if we would have done tshuva, we wouldn't have to start the 9 days. Hopefully, we will. And the 9 days will turn into a Yom Tov, Chol HaMoed. We're not going to do tshuva. We're going to have to go through the 9 days. Hopefully, that will spark us to do tshuva. And we won't have to come to Erev Tisha B'Av. That won't work. Another Erev Tisha B'Av. That won't work. Another Tisha B'Av. So every year we relive that process. And the process starts with less intense, more intense, until the most intense. That's why it's not the regular mourning period, because it's reliving how the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So that is why the order of the mourning is inverted. 2 reasons. Now let's get to Tisha B'Av itself. What's the purpose of mourning? Why do we mourn? Somebody dies. Okay, well, that's the way of the world. God took them to a better world, and why should we mourn? There's 2 reasons for mourning. 2 ideas. One is it's covered for the nifter. Aside from venting one's emotions, like we said, but it's also a cover for the person who died. Because if somebody's relative dies, and the next day they go business as usual, that means that this person is irrelevant. Because it makes no difference if he's here or not here, business as usual. So it's covered for the nifter to realize that something's wrong. Something's missing. It's a statement that this person made a difference. I can't just go on regular without him. And usually that emotion hits you anyway. And you have to then get used to that loss and bring it under intellectual control. That's one idea of mourning. Second idea of mourning, the Rashba says, is that the neshama, when it leaves this world, takes time to get acclimated to its new surroundings. It's not easy to leave a physical world and all of a sudden become spiritual. So the more the person was tied to this world, the more difficult it is. So the first 3 days, it says, that the neshama is bewildered. And it goes back from the house to the grave, doesn't know exactly where it belongs. After 3 days, it gets a little bit more acclimated. And after 7 days, more acclimated. After 30 days, more acclimated. And finally, at the end of the year, the soul is totally acclimated to its new surroundings in the spiritual world. Misery loves company. That's called nosei ba'ol in chaveira. Person helps out, feels the pain of someone else. So by mourning, you make the neshama feel better because he sees that his family is going through the same difficulty he's going through. The 3 days, the most intense mourning, so the 7 days, the 30 days, the year, as the neshama acclimates with difficulty to the next world, the family also goes through a similar process. So it helps the neshama along. In order to be more connected to the neshama, you have to be less connected to the physical world. So a lot of the laws of mourning take you out of the physical world. You're not so involved in the niceties of the physicality of the world. You don't wash, you don't, unless you go cut your hair, you're not concerned about the physical niceties of this world, and then you can be more sensitive to the difficulties of the neshama. That's a second purpose of mourning. Similarly, that's what Tisha B'Av is all about. It's hard for us to imagine what's missing, but the Beis Hamikdash is still here. It's just not here physically. Tavu ba'aretz she'areha says the Beis Hamikdash wasn't destroyed. It's just that the Beis Hamikdash sunk into the ground. It's there. It's not destroyed. There's a Beis Hamikdash Shalmala. There's a spiritual Beis Hamikdash. The more that you can identify with that through mourning, the more you can feel what the loss is. It's impossible to come on Tisha B'Av and feel the loss emotionally. But you have to build up to it. So if you build up to it from Shivas U'Katavos, 21 days. It takes 21 days. 21 is 3 times a period of time that's considered a complete period of time. You want to do something. Time-wise, 7 days is a complete unit of time. 7 days of creation, 7 days of Yom Tif, right? 7 days is 7 days of mourning, 7 days of Sheva Brachas. When you want to do something for a complete unit of time, it's 7 days. A chazaka is 3 times that. So if you want to really get into feeling what Tisha B'Av is, you need 21 days to prepare for it. And then maybe you can feel the mourning. And when you're mourning for the Beis Hamikdash, you feel something's missing. You can identify with the spiritual Beis Hamikdash and realize what's missing. Just like you can identify with the soul when you go through the mourning for somebody who's died. Another idea is that when somebody dies, there's a special decree that eventually you can control it. You stop mourning. Special decree from heaven that when it's finished, you come to closure. On the other hand, when it's not finished, it just appears to be finished, then there's never closure. You learn that from Yaakov Avinu. It says, "Vayimoim lehisnachem." Yaakov Avinu refused to be comforted over Yosef because deep down he had that feeling that it's not over, that he's still alive. And there's a special gzeira that the dead is forgotten, but not the living. So the gzeira, the decree, didn't work by him. So he mourned for 22 years. Usually after a year, it's the effect. It becomes more intellectual than emotional. Says, Kol ha-misabel al Yerushalayim zoche v'roeh b'simchosa. A person who mourns for Yerushalayim doesn't say he will merit to see the simcha, but it says in the present, zoche v'roeh, in the present, he sees the simcha, meaning he understands what's missing. Now, if you can mourn, that means that you can identify with what is missing. You can identify with what is there and what's missing. So immediately you merit to see what the simcha could be. You understand what's missing. Because that in itself is something to mourn about. That you don't understand what's missing. And if we just come to Tisha B'Av without any preparation, then that's what it'll be. They tell the story when they got access to the Kosel after the 6-Day War. So people streamed to the Kosel, hadn't been there for 20 years more. And, 20 years. And people came and they cried by the Kosel. And there were 2 Israeli soldiers, Chilonim, and they were bewildered. They know what people crying by this wall. What in the world's going on? They had no idea what it was all about. And all of a sudden, one of them started to cry. So the other soldiers said, look, these people know what's going on. That's why they're crying. What in the world are you crying about? He said, I'm crying because I don't know what they're crying for. That's the worst thing. I don't even know what they're crying for. So the person knows what he's crying for. That's it. There's no greater simcha than that. I know that I feel something's missing. That in itself is a simcha. So zoche v'roeh b'simchos. And there's also a certain simcha that if I can continue mourning after 2,000 years, that means it's not lost. It's not finished. Not closure. It's still there. It's not that it's gone and that's the end. But there's hope. Because if there wouldn't be hope, how could we continue mourning after 2,000 years? We should have stopped mourning. Tell a famous story of Napoleon was walking through the streets of Paris on Tisha B'Av night, and he hears wailing coming from a building. Walks into the building, he sees a bunch of old Jewish men sitting on the floor, crying their eyes out in the dark. He goes over to one and he says, what happened? They said, our temple was destroyed. He said, where's your temple? It's in Jerusalem. So terrible. My condolences. He runs out, goes to his officer of what's it called, information, what's it called, whatever. So he asked him, listen, have you heard of any temples that have been destroyed in Jerusalem lately? Right? There's people sitting and mourning the destruction. When exactly it happened? What, keep up on the intelligence. I'd like to know what's, I'm not going to rule the world, but what's gone on in my world? Temple's been destroyed. The guy says, I don't know, we have no intelligence about any temples being destroyed in Jerusalem. Goes back and he says, good news for you. My intelligence officer says that they have no word of a temple being destroyed in Jerusalem. He said, no, it was destroyed 2,000 years ago. He said, you guys are sitting on the floor, still mourning a temple that was destroyed 2,000 years ago? People who can mourn after 2,000 years deserve to have it rebuilt. It means it's not lost. That's also a simcha. It's also a simcha. But I think there's more to it. And I'm going to tell you is my idea. I don't know if it's true or not true. You're not going to find it anywhere else. It's based on a mabit, which I agree that the mabit does not say what I'm going to tell you. But I think that you can understand from the mabit what I'm going to tell you. The mabit says something very simple. He says that if it wouldn't have been for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, then there'd only be one fast day that the Torah demands a year. That's it. One full 24-hour fast day, Yom Kippur. That's it. And but now, because the Beis HaMikdash has been destroyed, it necessitated another full day fast day, similar to Yom Kippur, called Tisha B'Av. Okay, you can understand that simply. But that's the fact. But I think the Mabid is telling us something much deeper. Tell you what. First of all, let's discuss Yom Kippur. How does Yom Kippur work? Yom Kippur is a day that's supposed to give you the incentive to repent. That's what Yom Kippur is, a day of repentance. Yom Kippurim, it's a day of atonement, and the atonement you get by doing tshuva. So how does the entire motif of Yom Kippur bring you to tshuva? One of the ideas is the following. Yom Kippur is not a sad day. If you think that Yom Kippur is a sad day, you don't know what Yom Kippur is all about. I heard of Yashader Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, from Yeshiva University, Boston. I heard him say once that if he wouldn't be able to fast on Yom Kippur 1 year, he doesn't know how he'd make it through the year. He gets his entire spiritual energy for the year from Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is an exhilarating day. It was one of the greatest, happiest days of the year. Why? Because Yom Kippur, you feel pure. You know what Yom Kippur is like? It says that the world to come is Ein lo bo achila, v'lo shtiya, v'lo yeshiva. The world to come, there's no eating or drinking or sitting. You're pure, like an angel. In the world to come, everything is serene. There's only shalom, there's only peace and serenity. That's what Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur, you go 1 day into the world to come. There's no eating, there's no drinking, there's no sitting. People stand, they dress in white like angels. Everybody's friendly, right? Everybody's asked mechila from everybody else before Yom Kippur. You look around, you feel good with everybody. So you experience what it's like to be in a perfect spiritual world. And then you contrast that with what the rest of the year is like, and you feel miserable. Because, this is the world I'd like to be in. And the world of sin is a world that is really not such a nice world. That gives you the incentive to do tshuva. By contrasting what the world of Yom Kippur is with the world of sin, it makes you want to get rid of the sins and be as close to that Yom Kippur spirit the entire year. It's one of the ways that Yom Kippur induces and gives the incentive to tshuva. As long as there was a Beis HaMikdash, Yom Kippur achieved that. It mamish made people feel like they're 1 day in the world to come. There was a Beis HaMikdash. There was a Kohen Gadol who went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He was the representative of the Jewish people. He really went in and close to God, and we're all going in with him. And you felt tremendous uplifting feeling, the entire Jewish people. After the Beis HaMikdash, it was diminished. We don't have a Beis HaMikdash, and Yom Kippur itself doesn't give that feeling anymore. I'll give you an example to prove this point. The Mishnah says in Tainus that they never made a full-day fast day, 24-hour fast day on Sunday. One of the reasons is that it would be dangerous to a person's life, because going from Shabbos to a full-day fast day, the contrast is so great that it would endanger a person's life. Now, I don't know, but whenever Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos, like this year, we fast on Sunday. Sunday usually comes right after Shabbos. So we are fasting a full-day fast day after Shabbos. And not pikuach nefesh. Most people don't die from keeping Tisha B'Av on Sunday. How can we do? If it's supposed to be dangerous to your life, how could they allow Tisha B'Av to be celebrated on Sunday? The answer is, when there was a Beis HaMikdash, Shabbos was different. Shabbos was such an intense spiritual experience that going from Shabbos, that kind of Shabbos, to a full-day fast day, the contrast was devastating, was dangerous to your life. But once there's no more Beis HaMikdash, Shabbos is diminished. So from that kind of Shabbos to a full day fast, there's no big deal. Same thing with Yom Kippur. When there was a Beis Hamikdash, Yom Kippur was Yom Kippur, and you could really feel that you were in Olam Haba for one day, and then the contrast of a world of sin was so devastating that it gave you the incentive to do tshuva. But after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Yom Kippur doesn't have that effect anymore. So therefore, imagine if you walk into a bright room, it dazzles you. But if you walk into a dimly lit room, it doesn't dazzle you. Before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Yom Kippur was a dazzling room. So it affected you. After the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Yom Kippur is a dimly lit room. It doesn't dazzle you. But how can you make a dimly lit room dazzling? I'll tell you how. You go into a cellar for a while, and your pupils, iris, gets used to the dark, and then you walk into even a dimly lit room, and you're dazzled. It's like bright light. The contrast makes it like bright light. And therefore, says the Mabit, as long as there was a Beis Hamikdash, we only needed one day in the year to give us an incentive to do tshuva, one fast. But once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, it doesn't help anymore, just Yom Kippur. Now you needed a Tisha B'Av. Why? Because Tisha B'Av is also a day in a different world. It's also a day in a world where there's no eating, no drinking, but there's no shalom. You don't greet people. And you don't learn Torah. It's a different kind of world. It's a day of mourning. So it's a day in the next world, except there's two parts of the next world. There's the Olam Haba Gan Eden, and there's the Olam Haba Gehenna. Tisha B'Av is a day in Gehenna. And when you spend a day in Gehenna, and you contrast that with even a dimly lit Yom Kippur, the dimly lit Yom Kippur becomes dazzling. And it restores what Yom Kippur can do. But first you need to go into Gehenna, and then come out to the Gan Eden of Yom Kippur. Without the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, going into the Gan Eden of Yom Kippur was enough by itself. And that's why, like we said, there are 21 days, 7-day units, 3 times, to prepare to let Tisha B'Av make its mark on you, that you can feel being in Gehenna. And then there are 21 days, exactly, from after Tisha B'Av till Rosh Chodesh Elul. And then from Rosh Chodesh Elul is a 40-day preparation till Yom Kippur. So from Shivasa B'Tammuz till Yom Kippur is all one process. And it gives you the ability now to make Yom Kippur have that effect of the incentive of tshuva by contrasting it to the Tisha B'Av of a day in Gehenna. Now the day in Gan Eden can be effective even after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, there's no tshuva on Tisha B'Av. There's mourning, but the purpose of that mourning is to make the incentive of tshuva of Yom Kippur and its whole process before more effective. So really, the tshuva of Tisha B'Av is Yom Kippur. But it's a process that you need, the mourning of Tisha B'Av, to feel that Gehenna that exists without a Beis Hamikdash. That's why on Tisha B'Av we don't do tshuva. We don't speak about slichus. We don't say vidur. We mourn. But by being able to mourn, preparing for it from Shivasa B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av, intellectually getting yourself psyched up to that emotion, feeling that emotion, and then carrying it on till Elul, through Elul, till Yom Kippur, that whole process is a process of tshuva. That's what Tisha B'Av, in my estimation, at least one perspective, is all about. The story is told that Yoshever Soloveitchik, the Beis HaLevi, was a Rav in Slutsk originally, and he had a very not appetizing experience there, and he pretty much accepted he's never going to become a Rav again. I understand that. And he just decided he doesn't want to be anything to do with Rabbanus. And then they came and offered him the Rabbanus in Brisk. He came eventually the Brisker Rav of Brisk. And they sent a delegation to offer him the Rabbanus and Bris, and he refused. He said, I'm sorry, but not going into Rabbanus again. And they begged, and they tried, and they weren't successful. Finally, in the last desperation, the head of the delegation got up, and he said, Harav, 25,000 Jews are waiting for the Rav in Brisk. How can you keep 25,000 Jews waiting? He got up, told his Rebbetzin, get my kapota and coat, we're going to Brisk. I can't keep 25,000 Jews waiting. When the Chafetz Chaim heard this story, he cried. And he said, if Yoshever Brisker couldn't keep 25,000 Jews waiting, how does the Rebbeinu Shalom keep thousands and thousands of Jews waiting? We're waiting for Mashiach. He said, must be they're not waiting. Because if they really be waiting, how could the Rebbeinu Shalom keep us waiting? So Yirtzeh Hashem, if we go through this process properly, we understand what it's all about. We try to feel what's missing. Try to have a taste of it. And understand if we feel that, that in itself is a simcha. And therefore immediately after Tisha B'Av we have a Shabbos Nachamu. There's something to be happy about. At least now I know, I feel something's missing. And that feeling of something missing and experiencing on Tisha B'Av being in Gehenna will help me prepare for Yom Kippur. And on Yom Kippur I'll be able to do tshuva. And maybe with that tshuva we'll have the Beis HaMikdash built. If people are waiting for it and they're interested in going through this process, then the Chafetz Chaim guarantees that the Rebbeinu Shalom won't keep us waiting if we're really waiting. So Yirtzeh Hashem, if we take advantage of the process that Chazal gave us, the 3 weeks, the 9 days, Erev Tisha B'Av, and the aftermath, till Elul, through Yom Kippur, Yirtzeh Hashem, we will be able to take that process and use it properly. And if we use it properly, we won't have to come to another year of mourning. We'll be able to see, ultimately, the Beis HaMikdash built, Mashiach come, the world be the natural world that it's supposed to be, the V'yas Kol Tzedek Meir.